Thank you, Major. At this time, District 3 will hold the invocation and the pledge to the flag.
Let us all pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time you've allowed us to gather together, this time that we can be able to be about the business of this county. Help us to do so in a pleasing fashion that would benefit many people, but also be pleasing onto your side as well. Thank you for this great country that we live in and the ability that we have to be able to meet such as this, and as we do throughout the rest of the country in many counties and cities and states all over the country. Thank you for the freedoms that we have and the ability to assemble and the ability to have governance by the people and not by a tyrannical form of government. We appreciate that opportunity that you've given us. Continue to be with all those who need you at this time. We especially are mindful of the folks over in Paris and the folks affected by that awful tragedy there. Bless those families and bless the rest of the world as well, those areas that might be threatened by the evil that we see that's trying to harm many people. Please keep all those folks safe, keep us safe here as well. Again, be with us as we conduct this meeting tonight and help all to go well. It's through your Son we pray these things. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll take your handsets, please just press yes and stop right there for me. Everybody press yes. Is yours working there, Bob?
Apparently not.
There you go. All right. You got it. Okay.
Mr. Chair, while we're waiting, I think it might be an appropriate time to announce why Kim is not here tonight.
That'll be fine. We can do that. I was going to do it at the end, but Mr. Bradford's father passed away. I know him as Jim. I used to work with him. Good guy. But if you would, please keep Kim and her family in your prayers and thoughts. I've got a card here after the meeting, and I'll be collecting if anybody wants to give, and give it to her. So after the meeting, just see me, you can sign the card, and if you want to give, just give it to me, and make sure she gets it.
All right, I don't know what's wrong with this handset. It won't do the abstain. Let's do the proceed. All right, everybody hit confirm for me, please. Everybody hit confirm. Everybody go ahead and hit confirm. Go ahead, Mr. Shanks. Okay, got it. Now, conveniences. They're great. Mr. Chairman, you have 23 present, 1 absent. There's a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion, Commissioner Young?
Mr. Chairman, under other new business, I'd like to add item E3, which is the agreement we have before us.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on it?
What was the motion? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it, Mr. Chair.
Adding what you've got in front of you about the purchase and the sale agreement between us and the city. Seeing no discussion,
Sure.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now back to the original motion, approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve?
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of minutes of previous meeting.
Motion to approve?
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Unfinished business and action thereon by the board. Report of standing committees. Planning,
No unfinished business?
fiscal review,
No unfinished business.
nominating.
No unfinished business.
Report of special committees. Any other unfinished business? Quarterly reports and action thereon by the board. Road Fund, Road Supervisor Randy Jones. School Funds, Jerry Boyd, Director of Schools. County General Fund, Debt Service Fund, Solid Waste Sanitation Fund, and Self-Insurance Fund, and PR Fund, Randy Porter, County Exec.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept all as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business, report of standing committees. Planning,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item A, recommends approval to authorize County Executive Randy Porter to enter into agreement for various improvements to county property, and I so move.
have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item B recommends approval to transfer a vehicle from the Sheriff's Department to the Monterey Police Department as follows, and I so move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Wanza.
It's come to my attention that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in Monterey have still yet to approve of this, so I'll amend the motion to approve contingent upon approval of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen in Monterey.
Have a motion and a second to amend the motion that's on the floor. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now go back to the original motion as amended.
Motion to approve.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item C is to consider proposed changes to the county personnel policy. I think that Jeff Jones has a presentation, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Atwood. I'm going to ask that you do me a favor tonight. I'm going to go through all of these changes, and I guess to be efficient, if I could go through the changes and then go back, double back, and answer any questions that you might have about any specific problems or questions that you might have. Randy sent to you a sheet with a list of changes, or proposed changes. And the first thing that we need to recognize is that this is just the first part of the countywide personnel policy. There are actually two parts. The second part is a drug testing component, and we're still looking at the alcohol and drug policies. But those mainly deal with safety-sensitive positions, which doesn't deal with most of the positions in the county. The biggest part of this first part of the countywide personnel policy tracks federal and state law. So really there can't be too many changes to it because we have to do what federal and state law says. So the provisions and the proposed changes that are before you right now are for several reasons. Number one, there have been some changes in state law, and we'll talk about those in just a second. Also to help with some consistency, because even though the personnel policy was changed in 2014, there's been an inconsistent application of some of the provisions of the policy, and also to help with the administration of certain provisions of the policies. So, the first two changes listed on your page are the change of 20 days of comp time and the accrual of 20 days of vacation time. You know, one of the problems that we've had in the past is that when you accrue vacation time, that is an accrued liability which has to be reported. It goes on to the audit. And right now, the personnel policy allows county employees to accrue up to 20 days of leave time and 20 days of vacation and 20 days of comp time. After looking at it, and county officials recommend that that be changed to 10 days on each. Any leftover unused days would be converted to sick time, which could impact an employee's retirement, be to their benefit. But the reason for lowering that to 10 days of accrued time is it helps with administration of those days. It helps the county officials as far as keeping up with it. It helps as far as the disruption of their offices being lessened because there aren't as many days to take. And also is easier to keep up with as far as audit purposes go. One of the provisions of the policy that has continually caused questions is the longevity portion of the policy. And there are several components to it. One of them is the change in the amount. It's $100 per year, and I think that was actually approved by the county commission some time ago. The second component of the longevity portion is the calculation of it. The way that it has been calculated over the last several years is by calculating it as of July 1, the beginning of the fiscal year, which, if you think about it, is a little difficult to make sense, because if somebody is employed as of June 1 and you go over the timeline 1 month, you get credit for a year's service. It makes a lot more sense to calculate that based on an employee's anniversary date of their employment. So that's a recommended change in the policy. The checks that are distributed for longevity will still be distributed one time a year in November. It's just easier as far as cutting those checks rather than cutting several checks all throughout the year. There was a recommended change in the policy, and I think this has also been adopted as well, that the break in service be no more than 90 days. And I know there has been some questions about that in the past, and quite a great deal of discussion at the county commission. But the deal is that we as a county lose a lot of good employees to private industry. I know that that's something that the Sheriff's Department deals with and EMS deals with. When you have somebody that's trained up and they stay with us for a little while, they can get possibly a better paying job in Davidson County. So if we have those situations where we can attract and keep those good employees, longevity is one way that we can do it. And if we have somebody that leaves and decides within 3 months, I've made a mistake, I really would like to come back to my old job, and we can keep them in, and this longevity is a carrot that we can hang out there for them, then that's something we probably should do, because we don't have that many tools in our toolbox as a county. So that was a recommendation. There was also a recommendation that county officials be eligible for longevity as well, because there hasn't been a clear definition in the policy. We did take a look at that. There are some Attorney General's opinions that basically are going to preclude that the administration and calculation of longevity, if county officials were eligible for it, is just going to be too difficult. So that recommendation is being withdrawn. Another recommendation is that county officials recommended a change in policy that if an employee quits or is terminated in a year, that they're not going to be eligible for that longevity pay. Okay, which just makes sense. You shouldn't receive a bonus in a year if you've been fired. But the way that the policy reads right now, it's unclear, and quite frankly, probably they would be entitled to that longevity pay. There's another provision in there that and this is one, I believe it's already there, but we confirmed that county officials want to allow employees to borrow against non-accrued vacation time. If you've just started, they want to allow employees to borrow against that time. There are a few things that we added just for clarification purposes. When we're talking about unused sick leave and so forth, we added retirement or death, because if an employee dies and have unused sick leave and their estate wants to be compensated for it, we added that language in Section 7A. Also, there is a provision in the Tennessee law where you can designate a beneficiary for your pay if you pass away while on the job as a governmental employee. So we added in Section 19 a designated beneficiary to the language. Now, there are a couple of attachments that I'm not going to really discuss right here because they apply to specific departments. But we also added a number of addendums that are proposed recommendations, and I'm going to walk down through those very fast, and I'll be happy to answer any questions when we get through. And the reason that we titled them addendums is because these are policies that are recommended that are not part of the countywide personnel policy right now. The first thing is an email policy. And basically what this policy does is inform county employees that the county conducts business via email. And most private industry has email policies. Basically with a governmental entity, because you're subject to the Open Records Act, we need to tell our employees that there is not a privacy interest in these emails, and it's subject to an open records request. Okay? And the second thing that this policy does is require all the employees to have an email address for ease of communication. It's easy to put county employees on a distribution list and disseminate information that's important to them that they need to have. The second addendum is the travel policy. The travel policy that the county has right now is a little confusing. So what this addendum does is basically say that the county is going to follow the state guidelines, and we've attached that to the policy. The third addendum is an abusive conduct prevention policy. Last year, the Tennessee legislature adopted what they call a Healthy Workplace Act. It requires public employers to adopt a policy related to anti-bullying. The legislature came out with a model policy as of March of this year. If you as a commission adopt this or a county adopts it, it provides immunity for the county. It's something that you really need to do. And so that's part of this as well. All you have to do is flip on the news to see all these crazy people shooting up places of employment, people getting torqued out about this and that. And for that reason, there's an addendum 4, which is a workplace violence policy. And I think that's a recommendation for all employers, really. Addendum number 5 is a social media policy. We all know how social media has exploded over the last several years, and it's important that employers have policies regarding social media as to what an employer's expectation is if you're using social media as part of your job, or you're using social media privately, but it's affecting your county employment. Social media is basically the rules, federal rules regarding employment are still the same. It's just a different mode of communication, and employees need to know that. And so basically what we've done is track the state's social media policy, and we're suggesting that the county adopt that as well. Addendum number 6, I'm not entirely sure that it's necessary that this be in here, but this is for clarification purposes. For whatever reason, when the countywide pay scales policy was adopted, there was a provision saying that it was an amendment to the countywide personnel policy, but in the preamble, the very beginning of the pay scales policy, it says this is a standalone policy. So either it's an amendment or it's a standalone, and so what we're saying with addendum number 6 is it's a standalone policy. It's not part of the countywide personnel policy. And the last addendum is a no spouse, no dating rule. This is an anti-fraternization policy. Essentially what this is basically saying that county employees can't date one another. This is pretty much a standard with private companies, simply because of all the problems that you can run into when you have 2 employees in the same company, and especially in the same department, dating one another. All right? I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have about any of this laundry list here.
Commissioner Bertram.
Jeff, I have one question concerning the no spouse, no dating rule. I've heard this several different ways from several different companies, and one was Tennessee Highway Patrol. They implemented this rule, and just a short time down the road, they withdrew this. Is it legal?
Yes, it absolutely is. And that's up to you as an employer as to whether or not this is something that you want to implement. There's no question that it's legal. I mean, the deal is, Donnie, is that you can't tell two employees that they can't date one another, but you can tell two employees, if you decide to date, one of you is not going to be able to work here. It's just that simple. Okay? And the reason for anti-fraternization policies is because of all of the problems that it creates. When you have two people who, especially if they're in the same department, who work closely together, who date for a period of time, and then break up. All kinds of problems with that. If you have an employee who is married, dating another employee, or two married employees that are dating, aside from the moral implications of that, that creates all kinds of problems, all kinds of workplace violence issues. 2006, we saw on the news a guy, husband, suspects wife and coworker of cheating and comes in and shoots up the parking lot. That's the reason that most companies will enact a no spouse, no dating rule.
So why would Tennessee Highway Patrol withdraw from this?
I have no idea. I do not know.
Good. Commissioner Short.
Jeff, on the abusive conduct clause, you mentioned bullying. I think we all have different ideas of what bullying is, but aren't there already in place specific conducts as they pertain to abusive behavior of any kind in the workplace already?
Not necessarily. There are 34 states in the United States that have attempted to pass healthy workplace acts. And at this time, there are only a few that have actually passed it. Tennessee passed it, but only applied it to public employers. And I think that what the intent of the legislature is to do is to expand this to private employers at some point in the future after it sees how public employers deal with it. Bullying is a humongous issue for employers, and I can go through a whole laundry list of cases. I don't want to take up the Commission's time tonight doing that. But I can tell you this. One of the things that our law firm does, and we do a lot of employment work, is that we look at some national conventions, such as the Society for Human Resource Management, and look at the list of topics that they have year after year to see what are the hot topics that are going on. And for whatever reason, over the last several years, we saw bullying as being a real hot topic. And at first I thought, this is a fluff topic, but it's not. It's a real problem in employment because it fits in that gray area between workplace violence. It's somewhere in the middle, and it's a tremendous issue for employers right now. And so having a policy is a wise thing to do. But aside from that, the legislature has mandated that you guys have to have a policy, and they've adopted a model policy, and I can't imagine why you wouldn't want to do this. Aside from the bullying component, it provides immunity for the county for any suits that are filed as a result of it. So you got to do it. There's some things you can say.
I'm not arguing
Yeah, okay.
whether we should do it or not, but I've just thought that there was already adequate, whether it's federal or state
No, there's not.
guidelines as to
That's a really good
workplace behavior.
that's a really good question, but truly there's not.
Good, Commissioner Short.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Holmes.
Mr. Jones, what about the employees that are dating now? What will happen to them?
Well, I know that you're going to have some employees that are not just dating but are married. Those employees would have to be grandfathered in, I suppose. As far as the employees that are dating right now, you could potentially have a problem right now. I mean, and for all the reasons that I would, in my response to Donnie. And that's what you as an employer would have to decide as to whether or not this is something that you want to do. Given the risk, given the problems of enforcement. I mean, the reality, Danny, is that we know just because you have an anti-fraternization policy that you're not going to preclude every employee or all employees from hooking up. That happens, but what you're doing with that policy is you're trying to protect yourself as an employer. That's it.
Commissioner Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've all probably had copies of the proposed changes in front of us and good explanations, and I have a lot of faith in our county attorney because he practices this sort of law on a day-to-day basis, and I feel like what's been proposed is fair and equitable. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the county personnel policy as presented with the 7 amendments and the 1 withdrawal.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion about the motion that's on the floor?
I've got a question.
Is it about what the motion is right now?
No.
Or is, okay.
Okay.
I tell you what, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer Larry's question if referring to Commissioner Martin to allow me to do so.
I'll allow that.
That's fine. Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you. On the subject of bullying, would that come under employers also be subject to this rule?
Only public employers right now is the way that the law reads. And so what the law mandates is that public employers must adopt a policy related to it. And the good news is that before the model policy was promulgated, was drafted and sent out, there are policies all over the place on this stuff. Basically with the same kind of questions that Tom asked about what's the definition of bullying and how you're going to manage that. And the Tennessee legislature knew that when they adopted the law, because they said that they would adopt a model policy, and it was supposed to come out shortly after the law went into effect last July, or July of 2014. But for whatever reason, it didn't happen because they thought that the model policy was going to come out as early as November of 2014. But they kept pushing it back, and it came out in March of this year. So again, this is one that you just have to do to give you guys some immunity on this subject.
Okay. One other question on the longevity. If someone is fired, let's just say they were wrongfully fired, would they still be able to come back if it was proven that they was wrongfully fired, terminated, they get their longevity? It's not unheard of, that it's happened before.
I understand.
Just protection of the employee.
Well, it's it's kind of like the old country saying that each jug rests on its own bottom, each case kind of turns on its own facts. And I hate to give you a lawyer answer, but it kind of depends. Presumably, if there was a wrongful termination, and I think I understand what you're asking me, if it was a wrongful termination and it was just absolutely clear cut, and within the 90 days and fits within the policy, certainly that'd be up to the employer.
Jeff, you just want to run the gauntlet while they're here?
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Savage?
Two. One, where it talks about can borrow against non-accrued vacation time. What's the threshold?
I don't know what the threshold is on that. I mean, that certainly is up to and Randy, you might be able to help me out with that part of it.
When elected officials met on these changes, it's to be in that fiscal year, and if the employee was to be terminated or leaves before they build up those days, they would be taking out of their final paycheck, whatever the amount that they owe the county is, so we wouldn't be losing anything.
And Chris, we know that vacation accrues at 1 day per month.
So the maximum would be 12.
Yep.
Unless you've been here,
Oh, yeah.
you get 18 days if you've been here 15 years
Yeah,
or longer.
for 15 years or longer, you get a day and a half per month.
So does that need to be included in this policy?
Well, I think if it's in the year, it's going to be limited by virtue of what you can accrue. In other words, if you have an employee that has no vacation time and they're borrowing against non-accrued vacation time, they can only borrow what they could get in a year. So for 15-year employees, that'd be 18 days, and for less, it would be 12 days, max they could borrow.
My only point is a lot of this stuff we're cleaning up, it does not say that here. It just says you can borrow against non-accrued. So my question is, are we gonna come back a couple of years and say, in 1 calendar year?
I think that's a fine suggestion, and I think that would be easy enough to deal with that right
A lot
now.
of this stuff's in paperwork anyway.
Yeah.
My other thing is concerning the emails. Is it really necessary for every county employee, every county official to
Well,
I mean, you're gonna force some people that may not own a computer.
when we started the Blue Cross, the new Blue Cross insurance policy this past year, everyone has an account set up, and we're doing online enrollment now, and that is your user is your email address.
If you don't have county insurance.
Well, then you're okay if you don't have county insurance, but there's very few employees that don't. The second thing is that with the direct deposit that we started, we're gonna start January 1st, where you can get your pay stubs online. That will be your email address also. It'll be your username to be able to get into that.
I want to, amend the, previous motion to include, accrued time up to 12 months.
I can add that too.
You can
I
add
can
to
add that
that's
to
fine. Go
the
ahead.
motion,
That'd be great.
which I will do, appreciate it.
Very good.
Commissioner Short.
Yes, I agree, with the comp time and the vacation time going back to 10 days, so, so what happens is this all rolls into sick time, and I assume sick time then you can carry on as long as you're an employee of the county, is that right? Just a general review of that policy, so I know exactly what we're agreeing to.
And you can help me out with this too, Randy, but the way that it works is, under the policy, you can cash in a certain amount of sick time for a certain amount of pay. It's not day for day. Or you can convert that to your TCRS. So it's not like you totally lose it.
You have to retire to get it, though.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's no limit on how many sick days you can have?
No,
Well, go ahead.
only on being paid for it.
On being paid for it, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Only on being paid for it. You can only be paid for so much, but you can accrue as many sick days as you've got, but it all goes to your retirement. Does that make sense? Not all, but the remainder goes to your retirement. Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you said this, Mr. Jones, I'm sorry, but I want to clarify, these changes do not apply to everybody because like the sheriff and the highway superintendent have their own policy. So I had a question that said, does this apply to the sheriff? No, it does not. He has his own
Now,
policy.
I did not say that, and I'm glad you caught that, Ben. Yeah, this is just a countywide personnel policy, and there are certain county officials that have opted out, that we want to opt out, and the sheriff is a good example, given the fact that he has sort of a quasi-military command structure and a lot of regulations that the rest of the county employees and county officials just simply don't have. We want him to have a standalone policy. Same thing with the highway department.
Commissioner Medley.
My question's been made and asked. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Hit the button, Jerry. Attaboy. Commissioner Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out that a lot of you weren't here a few years ago, and I'm not going to mention any names. When it comes back to this, all this stuff can't happen here. We had a real problem with bullying in the county, and we had to address that. So it can, and it will probably more than likely happen again, so we do need to do something about this.
Yes, sir. Any other discussion? I have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item D, Mr. Chair, recommends approval to name a ball field in Baxter in honor of Mike Clinton, a former county employee with 42 years of service to Putnam County Parks and Recreation, and I so move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes planning, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Atwood. Fiscal review.
Fiscal review. Item A recommends approval of budget amendments to the county general fund in the amount of $252,715, and I so move.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you take your handsets, if you favor the motion, vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone vote, and please stop right there. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change your vote anywhere? Now press confirm for me, if you would, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody press confirm. Thank you for waiting on me. Mr. Chairman, you have 23 voting yes, 1 absent, 0 abstain. Motion carries. Hang on just a second. All right, thanks, Chris. Go ahead.
Fiscal Review recommends approval of budget amendments to the General Purpose School Fund as presented. I so move.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk?
Favor the motion, take your handsets and vote yes. If you do not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone please vote. Stop right there for me, please. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Now please press confirm for me, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody press confirm. Mr. Shanks, you'll press confirm for me, please. By the way, good to see you back, Mr. Shanks. Glad everything went good. Mr. Chairman, you have 23 voting yes, 1 absent, 0 no, 0 abstain. Motion carries. Thank you.
Fiscal Review recommends approval of budget amendments to the Road Department Fund in the amount of $18,901, and I so move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you favor the motion, take your handsets and press yes. If you not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone vote and stop right there for me, please. Wait, please. Let me call for the confirmation, please. Everyone's not voted. All right, now all votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Now press confirm for me, ladies and gentlemen. All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, you have 23 voting yes, 1 absent, 0 no, 0 abstain. Motion carries. Thank you.
Fiscal Review recommends approval of the Putnam County Fairground rental schedule as submitted by County Executive Randy Porter, and I so move.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Atwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have really scrutinized this, I guess since last week, since we took it up. And I just gotta be frank, I really personally have a problem with us charging, the Fair Board for lease of that property. I looked at that, I think those people, the fairgrounds, first of all, was for the purpose of having a fair. The state sanctions our fair. We have a group that works hard at putting on a good fair, and then on the other hand, they take what money they make, when they are able to make, and put it back into the fairgrounds. To me, that's within the realm of paying for use of it. They're keeping that property and taking care of it and taking care of the buildings. Personally, I don't have any problem. I think they should be paying the utilities. I think that's something that we should expect is during that time that they pay the utilities. But, you know, I kind of personally relate it to the same thing as our library. I mean, we own that property. We don't charge the library to lease that building. In fact, we pay them because they render a service to the county that we see and feel is a benefit to our citizens. Well, I feel the same way personally about the fair and about that the lease payment that we're requesting them to make. I'll be happy to offer and listen to some discussion, but I would love to amend this that we eliminate them from a lease payment from this policy. again, I think we should leave the utility situation in, but I do make a motion that we relieve them from having to pay a lease payment.
Second.
I'll second it.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the amended motion? Commissioner Bowman, is yours on this, or is yours on the original? Y'all just want to talk, is y'all's on this or on the original motion? Okay. Okay, Mr. Clerk, can you verify exactly what he said here so everybody understand what they're voting on?
If I understand, Mr. Atwood, your motion was to amend, to eliminate the rental fees for the fair board to rent the fairgrounds for the fair.
That is correct, and to leave intact the utility situation, but only the lease payment, yes, that is correct.
All right.
Call the roll, Mr. Clerk.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, in order for us to call this roll, I'm gonna have to clear the board, and then when we get back to the original motion, depending on how this goes here, then you need to punch back in for discussion again. Everybody get that? Take your handsets, follow me. I'm gonna ask you to vote, and then stop right there, and please do not confirm until I ask you to confirm, all right? Now pick up your handset. If you favor the amendment of eliminating, this is the amendment, to eliminate the rental for the fair board, leaving intact the utility bill, press yes. If you're not in favor of the motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. Stop right there for me, please. Now, all votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? All minds are made up. Now, please press confirm for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you for cooperation there. All right. Mr. Chairman, you have 15 voting no, 0 absent, 7 voting yes. Motion fails. So you are back to the original motion. Yes.
Okay, y'all, it was wanting to, Commissioner Bowman.
Okay, Randy, several of us asked questions earlier, we were talking. In the last meeting, we were talking about the $2,500 deposit. Did you go back and look at that?
Yes, and it is there. It is required on the races and stuff for a $2,500 deposit, and for the races to be charged $2,000 per race day instead of the $1,000 that was for everyone else.
So each person that has each event that night, different night, would pay the $2,500? That was our question. Because it would be different people.
If it's different people. Now, if it's the same vendor putting on the race and it's a 2-night race,
Right.
he just pay
It'd just be the $2,500. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Reel.
Yes. I battled this for the county fair for on and off my whole first term up here. I think it is wrong to charge them to rent the fairgrounds, even though we do have something in place. They agreed, as Mr. Porter said, to give you $5,000. It takes a lot of money to make $5,000 at the fair. I know, been there, and it's a tough situation. I would like, and we did fight for people to make sure they had liability insurance, to make sure that they protect the county and whatever. There's a lot goes on over there and a lot of work. In the $5,000, they give you a lot more than $5,000 on what they do over there. Everything that's been done, there probably wouldn't even be a fairgrounds. It'd probably be rat infested over there if it wasn't for the fairgrounds and the fair board. I would like for Mr. Allen, he is the president, to maybe give you an overview if he'd like to speak, and if everybody's willing, to what he thinks his view is on the fair board being charged the $5,000, and if they are in agreement to pay the $5,000.
Mr. Allen, if you want to come up. If you you would, sir, state your name.
I'm John Allen, I'm president of the Fair Board, and I haven't felt like we've had a choice in the matter. You passed a resolution, nobody asked our opinion. We're 16 volunteers right now who devote about 12,000 hours a year to the county fair. The total budget's $400,000, and this year we made $10,000. So if we'd have paid rent this year, we'd have given you half of the profit. What we do is for the county and for the Upper Cumberland area. Many of you voted for me to be on this board to begin with. I didn't want separated from the county commission personally, but the board did. We didn't ask to be separated. A member of the county commission made the motion to separate us from you. That would not be my choice. But if you want $5,000 in rent, we'll figure out some way to pay you. But as volunteer, and as the 16 volunteers on the Fair Board, I feel like this is wrong because you don't require this of other volunteer groups. And we spent $26,000 on that fairgrounds this year, separate and apart from the utility bill of $11,500. That's a lot of money. But if you want the rent, we'll figure out a way to give it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Anything else, Commissioner Reel?
No.
Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some weeks ago, with the assistance of the county exec, he set up a committee to review this, try to come up with an equitable and fair agreement, and we did meet several times on it. And the last meeting that we had, which Mr. Allen was present, along with some other board members, my understanding was that we agreed to what was presented. And I thought we walked away with that in mind. So we would not have necessarily the discussion we're having because both parties were amenable to the meeting and to the schedule. I don't know what's happened since then, but we certainly spent time discussing it, and everybody was on board. So I just don't know why we're not in sync with the recommendation, but that's my opinion.
Mr. Adams?
Yes, I guess my question for Mr. Allen goes along with what Commissioner Martin just said. We were told last week that there was an agreement that the Fair Board had agreed, that Randy presented to us that there was an agreement that you were okay with paying the $500 a day plus utilities. I guess that's why I voted the way I did on the change to we were told that you guys were okay with it. So you're saying you're not okay with it?
I was not at the last meeting to correct that. I'm not arguing about this at all. You asked our opinion.
Your board representatives were there.
I understand they were there, yes, absolutely. And the board voted to support it because we don't think we have a choice. We've never felt we had a choice in the matter, if you want to know the truth. We came to the table to have a discussion, and the county side of it made an amount of money and never gave anything. We asked for two different less amounts, and they wouldn't agree to it. So you tell me, what choice do we have?
Well, there were some differences, Mr. Allen, on the front end, which you were on the first
Yes,
meeting.
absolutely. I was there the first meeting.
And we acknowledged after several meetings and several hours together, we acknowledged that there were those differences. And then I voted, I think as well as others, to approve what we were told at the meeting would be fair to both sides. And your representatives were there saying it is fair.
I didn't bring up this discussion tonight.
Well, I understand, but it appears to me that you're not supporting what your representatives were agreeing to.
I told you when I came to the podium, we would pay the rent. We'll figure out some way to pay the rent.
That's not what we agreed on, Mr. Allen. That's not what your representative and our representative agreed on. And I think the commissioners need to know this.
We agreed to pay $500, if that's what you want me to say. Yes, we did agree to that, and the board voted 100%, but we never really felt like we had a choice.
I'm not referring to your board, I'm referring to your board representatives as we were appointed as representatives of the
Right.
commission.
Correct.
The two bodies were asked to sit down and try to work out something that was equitable to both sides. There were differences on the front end, but we sat down with several different meetings, and we came up and we conceded, well, that's good, we can live with this if you guys can live with that. Your people said, we can live with this. And we all said, great, we're through.
Correct.
We're through with it. So I just really want the commission to know this was agreed upon by both parties.
And the board voted to support the issue. But you called me up and you asked my opinion, and I've given you my opinion.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner Adams?
No, sir, I'm done.
Commissioner Medley?
I have a question for you, Mr. Allen. How many people, I read in the paper, about 40,000 attended the fair?
That's correct, 40,447.
So how much money did you take in during the fair?
We took in total about 400,000.
Okay, how much does it cost to put on the fair?
Took all but $10,000. We made $10,000 profit.
Took $300,000 to put on a fair.
Correct.
Do you have expenditure of this money, the list of where you actually spend this kind of money at?
Yes.
Well,
We
could I
put
have?
it in the paper last year.
I would like to have a copy of it if you don't mind.
You're welcome to it. Our books are wide open.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Real?
Yes, I guess, John, I owe you an apology if I asked you to come up and voice your opinion, but I was in shock last week when I was told that you all agreed to pay the $500 a week, so I guess that's why I wanted your opinion on it, so.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back to the original motion as was made. If you favor that motion, take your handsets and vote yes. If you do not favor that motion, vote no. Everyone, please vote. Please stop right there for me, please. It is the same. We're right back to the fiscal review D because the amendment did not pass. So we're right back to recommends approval of the Putnam County Fair rental schedule as submitted by our county executive tonight. Okay? All right. Wait just a second. Mr. Ford, we're waiting on your vote. All right. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Now please press confirm, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, you have 19 voting yes, 4 voting no, 1 absent, no abstain. Motion carries.
That concludes fiscal review.
Thank you, Commissioner Savage. Nominating committee.
Yes, the nominating we have a board right now, the Clean Commission Board. I think if they ever met, they may have met one time. Our recommendation is, since we have the newer, Power Act Committee, is recommended to eliminate the Clean Commission Board of Appeals, and the committee and I so move.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That includes planning.
Thank you, Commissioner Real. Report of special committees. Resolutions.
There are no resolutions, Mr. Chairman.
Election of notaries.
Linda Beatty, Raymond D. Bowman, Shauna M. Brown, Beverly Coates, Trevor F. Dyer, Laura Ann Ivankita, Joe Harp, Patricia Ann Hertzfeld, Jeffrey S. Jackson, John Bice Johnson, Dolores M. Key, James A. Lynn, Terry C. McWilliams, Christy Weaver, Peggy J. Wiley.
To approve.
Have a motion and a second. Mr. Clerk?
Ladies and gentlemen, take your handsets. In favor of the motion, vote yes. Please, don't favor the motion, vote no. Please vote and stop right there for me, please. Everyone voting, all votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Now press confirm for me, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, you have 23 voting yes, 0 no, 1 absent. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Other new business. Here from Board of Education Director, Mr. Jerry Boyd, on update on the new Monterey High School construction. Would Jerry just state your name for us?
My name is Jerry Boyd, Director of Schools, Putnam County. Appreciate the opportunity. I do want to be open. If there was any thought that I needed to be given this opportunity, I felt like the last meeting I was brought up and I had an opportunity to respond when one of our citizens had some comments. His comments certainly were listened to and received, and we moved forward from there. Just from that time, we've had a board meeting and we've gotten updates as we have from our contractor and the architect. We have since the project started, both projects. Of course, we have completed the Upperman Middle School project, and it's no secret the Monterey project is ongoing. The last meeting, the completion date that seemed to be realistic, there was some discussion brought forth by the contractor, and then our person, John Magura, that is our maintenance supervisor, but also oversees and is on site regularly to be more or less our internal auditor of their work. The date that was thrown out was the end of January. It seems to be the date at this point that we can occupy the building, and we certainly hope that comes to be the truth. Weather permitting, even though most of the work right now is being done indoors. Comments were made at the last board meeting. The board has really required the contractor to come and ask some tough questions to the board. Something that was said the last board meeting by the contractor, he felt like there were two subcontractors that held the project up throughout the project, and he's been dealing with it, or at least he stated he had been, throughout the project. Those contractors, one was subcontractor, one was concrete, and one has been the electrical subcontractor. I do want to publicly state, in our observation, and I want to thank the subcontractors that are our local subcontractors, because as they have in all our past projects, they certainly have stepped up and they've done everything they could. Ironically, the two subcontractors that seem to be the problem are not local subcontractors, and they are from the same city as the contractor. So, the message that he has been repeatedly, as he's repeatedly heard from the board and from me, from John Magura, and probably from the community of Monterey, our contractor needs to step up and make sure this job gets done, and the expectation is it will be done right. Now, in response to some of the comments last time, we do have a contract. The contract is the same language it's been with our other projects, and we've had success in our past projects, coming in on time, coming in within the amount of money that we were given and we have budgeted. This project has been difficult from the beginning. It started, our board voted after the commission passed the bond. Our board voted to proceed with this project, the Monterey High School project, in October of 2013. 24 months later, plus, we're still trying to wrap this one up. It is looking, the facility is going to be outstanding. we'll all celebrate the day that we get the keys, so to speak. And more importantly, we'll celebrate the day that we have our students and our teachers and our staff in that facility, and moving forward. And we do hope that the truth is, it will be at the end of January, 1st of February. I do want to invite the commission. I will certainly entertain a day that I can schedule, or multiple days I can schedule prior to the opening, if any commissioners would like for me to schedule a time we can walk through the building together, if you have not had that opportunity. It is not complete, but the areas that seem to be lagging, there is in the administrative area in the front, which was one of the last areas that they had worked on and they had put a roof on. It's somewhat behind, but there's not a lot of work to be done in that area. The one area of concern that we have, it has been under roof for some time, is the auditorium, and that area seems to still have a significant amount of work to be done. The area where the classrooms are, which is referred to as the B wing, B1 and B2, it's a two-story area. It feasibly could be completed or could be considered completed within the next few weeks. The important thing about that is if we get permission from the fire marshal at some point, around Christmas, hopefully, we can start staging our furniture in those areas. That's where the majority of the furnishing will go. So, we hope to be able to coordinate that so that truly, if we do get the occupancy clearance, that our students and our teachers and staff can think about occupying the building ready to go. So, we're going to be staging a lot of things as we can and as quickly as we can. But, I'm excited about it. It's certainly frustrating to all of us in this community, in Putnam County and Monterey especially, and all of us that work with this project every day. But something that has been said, we're going to hold our contractors' feet to the fire. They are going to give us the product that we expect, and that's not even on the table of any kind of compromise. We want it quickly as we can, but again, the quality of the building is something that we know we have to have, because that building will have to last as long, at least, as the last building, like all of our buildings. But if it's okay with this commission, I will send some potential dates to Mr. Porter, and maybe he can help me communicate and coordinate. And if it's small groups, it doesn't have to be the whole group. Or you can just contact me directly if you would like, and we'll try to work out a time where we can get you on site and do a walkthrough. I certainly think, if you haven't done so, you need to do that. It's a very exciting facility, and if you haven't walked through the Upperman Middle School facility, same goes with that one as well. I know we did have an opening, a ribbon cutting for that one, but if you hadn't had the opportunity, myself or the principal would be glad to give you a tour of that facility. We should all be proud of it. And then, when Monterey doors open for business, so to speak, we certainly will all be proud of that. It's a unique building. There's probably not another one like it in the state of Tennessee. It was a very challenging project in the sense that we tried to rebuild it on the same site, less than 20 acres. Typically, that's a tough construction for a high school, and it's going to happen. And as I said, it's going to be very nice. The community is going to be very proud of it, both the Monterey community and Putnam County in general. Is there any questions that any of you have right now for me?
Commissioner Benny.
Yes, sir.
Hi.
Mr. Boyd.
Yes, sir.
I was at the school today, and I didn't go in, but I did drive around in the parking lot. I thought I was going to get run off by the construction, but it's looking very well, and it is going to be, it's going to be very nice.
Yes, sir.
Monterey and the Monterey area should be very proud of it. It is spectacular, especially on the ball field side. I'm looking. The only problem I have is most schools I went to, these are home side and the rival side. And it looks like the bleachers are all the same side. I hope we have plenty of security, working on the ball.
Yeah, it's sad that that even has to be a consideration, but we know unfortunately it does. But yes, it is a single bleacher. It's a capacity taken into account if it were separated on the other side of the field. But the way the construction had, we run into that ditch line on the other side, on the west side of the football field.
Right.
So, the decision was made when we were trying to maximize that property. So yes, there'll probably be, whether we have to physically put a barrier between the
Probably
two
a good
sides.
idea.
And I think we've had some experiences where we know that's probably gonna be a good plan to have.
And I think that it'd be a good idea that, me and Commissioner Jerry Robinson here, we are the fourth district commissioners up there, so we should be the first two to go up there, initiate going up there, and anybody else would like to go and check it out. And, we'd like to
Sure,
make
yes,
an
sir.
appointment
Yeah,
with you, go up there and check it out.
Yes, sir.
Get on the inside.
Yes, sir, we can schedule that, I'd be glad to do that.
And, we appreciate your, being on top of it and give us a good report on it. Appreciate you.
Well, and, our next board meeting, is the first Thursday in December. If any of you have the opportunity, you'll be able to hear the contractor, answer questions to the board, as well as the Red Chair architects giving their updates of the project as well. But, we're gonna continue that until they finish the project and the board, is satisfied with the work.
Commissioner Honeycutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Board, I know, I've got two great nieces that's going to graduate up there. They play basketball. Of course, they had hoped to play in the gym. I think maybe
sir.
Coach Hess and maybe even Coach West kind of scheduled a lot of their games after Christmas, and looks like they maybe with a little bit of luck, they will get to play some of their basketball games in the gym. And I think I read an article in the last write-up on the Herald Citizen about some. I'm assuming it will be completed before for anybody, any students go in there.
Yes, sir. I mean, the state fire marshal has a lot of authority over that decision. And my understanding is the ruling from the fire marshal's office is unless we're at that point, they're not gonna give us, the green light. We certainly hope, we want the basketball teams to have some of their games this season in that gym. It's gonna be it's a great venue for high school basketball. It will be.
My two great nieces are really anticipating, hoping to graduate
Well,
without going somewhere else. I know they're hoping to.
more importantly, we want this year's senior class. They were rising freshmen, so they actually never occupied the older building. They've been in the Uffelman Elementary School. They've been in that 80,000 square feet now since 2012. And, we definitely want to make sure, and I feel very confident. I know the principal, she's a little, number one, she's as frustrated probably more than anybody, and she wants it more than anybody, and I feel very good that that's gonna happen for all of the students this year and the community, for graduation to occur in the building.
Thank you. I like Larry Mann and all. Thank you for your good work and what you're doing up there. Thank you.
Well, it's a team effort. We wish, we had more control over maybe the work ethic of our contractor, and future, decisions. I know we certainly have a list of things, of considerations in the future as we move forward.
Commissioner Wanzen.
No question, just wanna echo what the other two gentlemen said, to appreciate you and the board, pressing the contractors and trying to get that done as quick as possible, but also appreciate the invite to tour the facility. I was one that did tour Brooks Middle, and it's a awesome school so far from what I've seen up there, and of course, growing up in that general neighborhood, I was glad to see how much Monterey, they're really progressing up there as a community, so definitely, glad to see that, but also glad to see appreciate the invite to, tour the facility, and definitely wanna take advantage of that opportunity.
Well, we had a lot of good comments. I had some superintendents. There's a Tennessee School Board Association meeting this weekend, and I got to see several superintendents. And if they're coming from East Tennessee, several of them have driven by the site. They're very impressed. They wanna have a tour someday as well. But, so a lot of people are, not just in Putnam County, are interested to see us finish this project.
Absolutely, thank you.
Commissioner Robinson.
has there been any discussion there at the end of the football field where that floods so much? What?
You're talking about towards the road, where that flooding? Well, we have a significant number of water storage underneath the site. So underneath that entire football field, there's a lot of storage tanks. So, you know, previously, when the old facility was there, it didn't maintain a lot of that water. So when we designed that retention system, you know, the engineers anticipate it's gonna alleviate a lot of that flooding, but a lot of that flooding is caused by I guess the pipe underneath the road. You know, it's very small, so it backs up quickly. But as far as holding the water better than it did previously when under the old facility, it can't even be compared. It'll do a much better job of holding that water, and a lot more water than it did before.
So, there, the drain that goes on the highway there, then under the business and under the railroad, they're not gonna try to do anything with that or try to?
No, sir, my understanding, I mean, that's a highway, so that would involve TDOT and some, a lot of other entities involved. But, you know, we manage, the board managed the site and our construction on the site, and we actually tried to improve the site with the engineering of how we hold the water on the site to help that problem. But ultimately, the only solution truly would be in the future, you know, to take care of that issue, you know, as a community, I'm sure. That's what I've been told anyway. I'm not an engineer, but that's
I know that's a
been
big problem when it
blatantly
rains.
told to me that
You know, they
until
have to
that's
change,
fixed.
they have to, you know, close the road and everything, it's such much water gathers there.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So
But
I
I think
hope this,
we've
you know, I hope
helped it
that-
a little on the runoff, but, you know, in a big storm and a lot of rain, it's coming off of that mountain.
So that, you think that's not gonna affect our football field or?
It will not. I mean, it'll make the situation better than it was before. Yes.
Okay, good, thank you, appreciate you.
Commissioner Medley?
Boyd, from the road, does that school have a flat roof on it?
That school has a flat roof. It has a low slope membrane roof. If you get up on the roof, and you're welcome to, if you come on a tour, I'll be glad to take you up on the roof. We can walk on it. It is sloped.
Commissioner Short?
Dr. Boyd, would it be safe to assume that once all of this is behind us, that your board will take a good hard look at the selection of contractors and architects and how they work together in the process?
I know that they hire me, and at times they expect me to speak for them, and this is one of them, and I can assure you there'll be a lot of provisions in place. You know, we are bound a little bit by the bid laws, but if we have a really strong criteria, you know, it's not always, you don't always have to take the lowest, especially if you know you're gonna have problems with that. But you have to do your due diligence, and you have to always abide by the law. But to answer your question, scrutiny will be on the top of the effort. Yes, sir.
Excellent move. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you.
Acknowledgement of letter from the Comptroller of the Treasury Office on the approval of the fiscal year 2016 budget. This requires no action, but it needs to be incorporated into the minutes, and the clerk will take care of that. Purchase and sale agreement, Mr. Randy Porter.
Mr. Chairman. Things happen a little faster than I first thought that they would, but the small parcel of land that the county and the city have been looking at, that is actually, if you look at the map, it looks like it should be a part of the business park. Those folks have already signed the agreement to sell the land to the city and county. It'll be equally shared, cost of buying the land, and I ask that you approve the agreement tonight.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Clerk?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you take your hand sets, if you favor the motion, vote yes. If not favor the motion, vote no. Everyone vote. Please stop right there for me, please. All votes, wait, Mr. Eversole. All votes are in. Anyone wish to change their vote anywhere? Now press confirm for me, please. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we have 23 voting yes, 1 absent, 0 abstained. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Announcements and statements. Commissioner
Bertram.
I'd like to announce that the Bangor Community Center, is having a fundraiser this weekend. Want to invite everybody to come out. The fundraiser is a bean supper, which will include a bowl of beans and your cornbread, dessert, and a drink. I know the president of the committee is here present with us tonight. They've done a really hard job, a really good job, making a lot of improvements out there. And just want to invite all of you, including all the commissioners are invited. Please come out and enjoy the meal with us if you can. It's $5 for adults, and I think it's $3 for a child. But, just please come and join us if you get a chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bertram. The visitation for Commissioner Bradford's father will be tomorrow. He will be at Presley Funeral Home. He'll be out from 4 to 8 o'clock tomorrow night, and then from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock Wednesday. 11 o'clock is the funeral. Commissioner Shanks, it's good to see you here tonight. You're looking good, he's always been. Also, please keep Commissioner Bowman's husband, Mike, in your prayers and thoughts, as he goes through his battles right now. The Baxter Senior Citizen will be having their Thanksgiving dinner, this Friday, I believe, November the 20th, and it will be from 11 to 1 o'clock. So if you're able to come down there, there's always a good turnout, and good food. When we get done here, Commissioners, we will be having an attorney-client meeting, second floor, in the conference room. And if no other announcements or statements need to be made, do I hear a motion and a second to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.